So did you know that the tree of knowledge in Genesis was actually a metaphor for sex?
Wrong answers only.
No, I'm asking you, did you know that? Because I was told that last night.
But okay.
Yeah, some lady on Facebook told me that we all know what the tree is. She put it in quotes. We all know what that tree is. And she was talking about sex. She thinks that the tree of knowledge was a metaphor of Eve and Adam not being married, and they engaged in premarital sex.
No comment.
So, I mean, that could change the entire Bible if that was the case.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say.
But this is our world now.
Well, it's just a lack of biblical knowledge. We say, a lot of people say they're Christians, but they're not actually following Christ.
Yeah, didn't you just preach on that?
Did I?
Yeah.
Did I? Yeah, chameleon or Christian. Based on the game. Well, based on the Bible, but
based on the
illustration.
Okay, so
chameleon.
Give me a rundown of that.
Like the game?
No.
Oh.
Chameleon or Christian.
So it comes from 1 John. So John's letter, he's writing to Christians, and in essence, what we were discovering is basically a lot of people say that they're Christians, but they're still living in the world. And in his letter, he writes, some of you are claiming to live in the light but walk in darkness. You're a liar. So straight up, like John just hits him with it.
Mm-hmm.
And in essence, what we're trying to draw a conclusion to is that you can't claim one thing and live for another. And so a lot of people stamp Christianity into their Instagram bio, into their letters, into their names and whatnot. But realistically, at their heart, there's a desire to live for themselves. There's a desire to live for their own motive and calling, which is abused now, and that's a whole episode. But ultimately, what side are you standing on? Because what a chameleon does is they blend in,
mm-hmm.
and so a lot of so-called Christians try to blend in with the Christian community. Yeah. They say the right things, sing the right songs. They raise their hand when it's time to raise their hand. They put the amen in the right place. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, their lives contradicting to what they're claiming.
Yeah, I saw this thing on social media. I want to get your take on it. So, I think it was a podcast, but two guys were talking about the 10 Commandments, and the one, thou shalt not use God's name in vain. And most people think of that as, we can't say GD or oh my. But he was like, what if it also means that you shouldn't take on the name of God as like a Christian and not live as a Christian? Like, does that make sense? Because it kind of like,
yeah.
I was like, that's an interesting take.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Because it sounds good. Like, and I think we're going to talk about it today. But like, just like what you were describing with the lady on Facebook, like she took a biblical principle and twisted it into her narrative. Mm-hmm. And truth be told, like Christians do the same thing. Like we abuse scripture, and that's why it's important to have a biblical knowledge and understanding. I think when we have David Neese on the podcast, like maybe we talk about
David, when are you coming on?
I think we realistically just need to go to him. So,
well, I've been telling you to book a date. This one's on you, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, he's not even here right now. Where is he? Is he in Washington?
We think. We don't know, though. They could be in D.C. today.
Hashtag where's David?
David's the BCM director at Coastal, and his leadership, which is students, he takes them on a leadership retreat. But it's the Amazing Race this year, so they are going to somewhere in the country and doing tactical leadership team building exercises where they're working together in groups of 3 and trying to, I guess, I've never watched the Amazing Race, but trying to get to the finish line first.
Well, did they like all go to DC?
I think so, but they were all on different flights.
See,
dude, his gift of administration blows my mind. I could never.
That would just give me so much distress and anxiety of like, number one, not knowing where I'm going, but like we were talking about this earlier, but like how to pack for it. Because he was telling us last night, like he gave a low and the high of the temperature, and that's 5 different outfits that I could pick for that that range. So that's interesting. We'll have to have him give us a
Yeah,
rundown of how that
for
went.
sure. What are we talking about today?
So today we are going to be talking about toxic empathy, and it's basically based on this book. I don't even have the cover on it. I took it
Shame.
off. Then I forgot that I didn't
Allie
have it.
Beth Stuckey.
Allie Beth Stuckey, my favorite podcaster. That's what this hat is. Relatable. That's her
Not me?
podcast. Huh?
I'm not your favorite.
No. Unfortunate. I'm sorry. This would be my favorite podcast if you weren't on it. So
Let's just make one thing clear. Just like these college football picks that he blames me for, he invited me on here.
yeah, I need like a sanity, a balance, to keep me in check.
I think we balance each other well. Like I
That's what
calm
Mom
you
was
down
saying.
as far as politics go, and you just call me stupid when you need to.
Wait a minute. Off camera, this guy is one of the most harassing people I've ever met towards me.
What?
Can anyone in this room vouch for that? Raina? Jordan?
Listen to
Yeah.
how like
They shook their head yes. We do have a live audience
Jordan's my
in here
wife,
again. We
by the
have.
way. Do you want to
She
jump on the
knows how
camera?
harassing you are.
She said no.
We have a live
She
audience.
harasses me as well.
We have our favorite child in here.
Hey, if you are looking for a dog, by the way, I will deliver it to your house. This
Found
lady
it.
was evicted and
You didn't
ended
even have
up
to
in
go into that
jail and
detail.
stuff, and so the dog was left, and I took the dog.
Rescued it.
I rescued the dog, but for the sake of Jordan's sanity, we are rehoming this dog. And
Blame
so,
Jordan. You're the one who hit a
I'm
deer
no,
because of the dog.
I did hit a deer going to get the dog a collar. I didn't mean to hit the deer, but I did on the way home.
I feel like you cried.
This dog
Not-
has cost us a lot of money.
I feel
Did
like you
cry?
cried, not about your truck, but about the deer. Like,
Oh, I was
my
heartbroken.
Did it die?
Yes, 100%. I mean, I hit her head on. She skirted across the highway.
Oh my gosh.
I think she was dead on impact though, so it makes
You
me
were
feel better
horrible.
about it. I didn't mean to hit her. Anyways, sorry.
So we are going to be talking about toxic empathy.
Toxic empathy. Tell me about Allie Beth Stuckey though, because this is important. Like, yes, it sounds like a great topic. It sounds like a concept that we should all grasp. But Allie Beth Stuckey? Give me her background.
Allie Beth Stuckey is a conservative Christian podcaster, spokesperson. She grew up in a Christian family, and she went off to college. She actually went to, I think it was Presbyterian College. She went here in South Carolina.
Brooke went there.
Oh, really?
Hmm?
She's she lives in Dallas, Texas, and her dad was like involved in politics too. So that's kind of where she got her political upbringing. And I'm pretty sure that she didn't like want anything to do with politics, kind of like how I was. But she felt the need to get involved and start speaking up about things. And I think she is the leading like Christian woman podcaster when it comes to Christianity and politics. And she just intertwines the two together, like how I want to do, but from like a millennial standpoint. So her podcast is called Relatable. It's more geared to women, but I think the men could also learn a lot from her.
Well, men don't have a backbone nowadays anyway, so we could learn something.
Amen. So her listeners, the women are called Related Gals, and the guys
Sounds
are
like a
Related
cult.
Bros.
Oh, okay.
So I'm a related bro. I'm an OG related bro. But she covers all the different topics, the hot topics, the cultural issues, just anything like in the news regarding Christianity and the culture and politics, and just ties it all together. And a couple years ago, I don't even know how I stumbled upon her podcast, but I was going through a rough time, as we all know. And her podcast is what started to wake me up of the sinful lifestyle that I was living in. And she laid out that topic so perfectly and so clearly that it just clicked with me. And that's what just made me start diving deeper into the Bible regarding the entire thing. And so I've just been listening to her ever since, and she's spot on every single time. I don't think there's one thing I disagree with her on, other than she was more for DeSantis than Trump this election before everyone dropped out. And that was like the thing that I was like,
She
but
was more for DeSantis.
yeah, than Trump. But now she's 100% in on Trump. She's one of the people that I think are in like the group that we fit in with, of we understand that Trump is the best choice right now between the two, but we also don't worship him. We know that
Yeah.
he's a flawed man. He's an imperfect person, But as we keep saying, God uses imperfect people for their perfect plan, and she understands that too. So she's not afraid to call him out when he says something ridiculous, just like how I do.
Like the
and we both
abortion
do.
stance at one point.
On the abortion stance, and she's pro-life, no exception. She's against the whole IVF thing too, and that's where I like get my knowledge and research from, is because they go just like in depth to the entire point of everything.
So what was her point of toxic empathy? Tell me what empathy means. Tell me what the premise of the book is.
So basically, like, empathy is like putting yourself in someone else's shoes so that you can like feel what they're feeling, and understanding what they're going through from like their perspective, which is a good thing. You know, like, we should be able to put ourselves in other people's shoes and understand where they're coming from. But the toxic part is when you're just relying on empathy itself to make decisions. You're just relying on emotion without research or understanding or even biblical knowledge. So the whole toxic empathy part is how... So the title is Toxic Empathy, How Progressive Exploit Christian Compassion. So the left has been using this compassion, this empathy, to make us feel bad for certain issues, whether it's abortion, whether it's the border, the LGBTQ, XYZ situation. They try to make us feel bad for them and then put us into a corner that, well, if we feel bad for them, that we have to accept and affirm what they want, so that they can be more happy here on earth and live their truth instead of the truth. So basically the book, it has five lies that she talks about, which we won't get into all of them. I kind of want to talk about like three main ones. Lie number 1, abortion is healthcare. Lie number 2, trans women are women. Lie number 3, love is love. Lie number 4, no human is illegal, regarding illegal immigration. And lie number 5, social justice is justice. So this book just kind of equips you on, each chapter starts out with the story regarding each topic. So it's, for the abortion one, it starts out with a woman who was having some complications, and she didn't think that she was going to be able to have like doctor's help, and then she thought she was going to die, which... That's what the left portrays, that women are going to get hurt from abortions, women are going to die because they can't have an abortion because of pro-life laws. But then she talks about the background of abortion, the history of abortion, what abortion actually is, and that we know that these procedures to save a woman's life, or even when the baby's non-viable, or when the baby died in the womb, like miscarriage, we know that they are not abortion. So she explains that, outlines that perfectly, and then tries to like help you combat what this toxic empathy is, how to push back, but in a loving Christian way. So that's basically like the premise of how the book is set up. Yeah. If that made sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely.
So I kind of want to talk about the abortion as healthcare, because...
Oh, wow. Shocker.
I know. It's the one that I care... First of all, we voted today. I wore a shirt that said Preborn Lives Matter. That is on the ballot this year, abortion. That is why it's line number 1, because it's one of the top issues that people are caring about, especially on the left, and they try to manipulate you and try to just get you to fall for this trap, and I think it's just an evil trap. But abortion is healthcare. We have Amelia in the background. She's giving commentary. What is she watching back there? Good answer. This introduction was like the longest part, though.
It is cool to me that you pointed out, too, that like she didn't want to get into politics, kind of like you, because I think, and this is, I guess this will be the conclusion that we can draw in all of these topics, that like sometimes our no is God's yes, and vice versa. Like our yes is God's no. So I think he just like clearly, kind of like what we're talking about with discipleship, or did talk about last week with serving. Like, how do you figure out your gifts? You just start serving. Like, you were saved to serve. And so I think she, being around it, maybe was like, no, like, that's like pastor's kids. They're like, I would never go into ministry. And then all of a sudden, boom, God's like, psych.
Yeah, as much as I love this podcast and doing this, I would really not want to be in politics. Like, that is not my desire.
When we talk about your story one week, I think you need to break that down for people.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's going to be like a 2-hour episode, and just how
we could do
got
2
here.
separate episodes. Like one's your story, and one is like, what, I don't know. Maybe it is a 2-hour episode.
How I got here. But like, I just feel like there needs to be people like us who, I think that's what we need, because we have like a lot of politicians who are power hungry people who want to be there. They want to go to DC. They want that power. And those are always the people who just stab us in the back and just ruin our entire country.
Well, I mean, anybody on camera can say anything to, it's toxic empathy. Like,
yeah.
I can make you feel like, and politicians do it. We hide behind cameras. Influencers do it. They want your attention because they want the clicks, they want the votes, they want it for a certain purpose. But then off camera, guess what? You are nothing to them.
Yeah. Well, remember earlier I said I have a joke to tell on the podcast. Okay, it's kind of a lengthy one, and we're already all over the place, but here we go. Nana just sent me this today, and it's so good, and it perfectly describes basically the Democrat Party and how they campaign. And I'm not saying that Republicans don't do this, but this is basically the Democrat Party, especially over the last 10 years. Okay, so a politician dies, right?
Mm-hmm.
He dies, and he gets to the pearly gates, so the joke goes. Now I forget who's outside the gate. Who's supposed to be like there? Is that even a thing? Like, is there someone at the gate? Is it St. Peter? St. Peter. Okay.
Is that true though? Is it biblically?
I don't know. This is a joke.
Passage Matthew 16:19, when Jesus gives Peter the keys to the kingdom of heaven. However, specific details about what happens at the gates of heaven are not explicitly outlined in the Bible. So I don't know. I probably would. I don't know if I'm gonna agree.
Okay. For the sake of the joke, we're going to say it's Peter because, like I said, it's a joke.
I could be wrong too. So
this part isn't even like relevant to the entire joke. So I don't know why we just spent 2 minutes looking that up. Okay, so let's say St. Peter, right? So a politician dies. He gets to the gate. St. Peter's there. He's like, "Oh, who are you?" And he's like, "I'm a politician." He's like, "Oh, well, your kind has to go through a different process." He was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, well, if you're a politician, you have to spend 1 day in heaven and then 1 day in hell, and then you can decide where you want to be." Right? So he spends a day in heaven, and basically everyone, he just sees angels, and he sees the people who have gone before him, and they're in, there's little feet pattering, running around. God love Amelia. He sees these angels, he sees people worshiping God in the throne room, and he's like, "Well, this is boring." He's like, "There's nothing interesting happening." So he spends the day there, and then the next day he spends a day in hell. And he was expecting to go down to see this like rugged land with nothing there, just kind of like bones and skeletons, kind of what you would picture hell as. But he gets there, and it's like green grass. There's just so much fun happening. There's
like
football games. There's golf courses. And so he spends the day in hell, and he plays golf all day. And so the next day he gets back up to heaven at the gates, and the guy at the gate, Peter or not, he was like, "So what's your decision?" He says, "Well, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I'm going to have to choose hell." He was like, "It was just more entertaining and fun." So he scampers back down to hell, and when he gets there, he's met with a barren land, skeletons everywhere, just fire burning, and people screaming in agony, and he meets the devil, and the previous day, the devil was in like a tuxedo. He was like real nice and everything. So the day that he made his choice, he sees the devil, and he looks like what we think the devil looks like. He's like, what's happening? And the devil says, "Well, yesterday we were campaigning. Today you voted." And the analogy is the politicians, they campaign on one thing, and then when you vote, it's completely different. Mm-hmm. And I think that's exactly what the Democrat Party looks like, because they promise all these things. They promise free healthcare. They promise free schooling. They promise abortion for all. They promise this beautiful lifestyle. And then you vote for them, and it's the same thing over and over.
It's kind of like some of the way people are selling Christianity too. Prosperity gospel, the progressive gospel. So any word that goes in front of gospel that should raise a red flag.
Yeah. And I think that's just what we're seeing in today's culture. So it's kind of not even a joke, it's reality.
Touche.
And that's what we're seeing. Okay, so back to this, toxic empathy. So abortion is healthcare. So basically it starts out.
Joke.
Huh?
That was a long joke.
It was
a good one, though. It wasn't really a joke.
It's, like I said,
kind of reality.
But we had to figure out who was at the gates, the pearly gates.
That's true. And I don't know.
Still TBD. I guess we'll find out when we get there.
Mm-hmm. Everybody will face judgment.
So hopefully we don't have to choose to pick a day.
You won't. Here on earth
Thank
is when you get to decide. Or
do we get to decide, or does he call us?
Well, God is the author, and so he's writing the story.
We need to have that conversation because it hurts my head.
It's mind blowing. But yeah, we can talk about it.
Abortion is healthcare.
Wrong.
Amen. So it starts out with this the story about this Halo. She was born in East Texas hospital. She was weighing just 3 pounds. She only lived for 4 hours, taking her last breath wrapped in the arms of her father, Lewis. And that in and of itself, I can't even fathom. I can't imagine someone going through a pregnancy to have a stillborn or the child dies immediately after birth. I'm basically like considered a miracle child, I guess, because my mom had a miscarriage 6 years before me. So
my mom had multiple miscarriages.
So you're a miracle child too.
Sure.
Because like the rate of, or I guess the potential to have an actual
children
child after that goes down, decreases in possibility. That's the word. So Halo was born with an underdeveloped skull and brain, the result of a birth defect, and babies who suffer from this birth defect are often stillborn or only survive a few days at most. So when the mom found out about this diagnosis when she was pregnant, the doctor said that, she should have an abortion. She wanted to have an abortion, but the state that she was in, Texas, they didn't allow that for, birth defects or anything, which I agree with. I don't think just because, you have a disability or something wrong with you that you should be put to death for that
reason.
Yeah, that reason or the disability that you might have. So basically she was used, to the point of the whole story is she was used by the left, propped up, saying, why should this mother have to go through this? And that's a tough question because as Christians, we're very compassionate people, that we care about other people. We're loving people who don't wish harm on people. But I think we talked about this before, that bad things happen to good people, but it's also used for God's glory in the end. And God has a perfect plan. We don't understand it. But in this case, she was propped up as propaganda for an election, used to sway a vote in favor of them. And I don't know what your opinion on it is, but I don't think anyone should lose their life inside the womb without being given a chance to survive.
I think there's two things you have to come to a conclusion with on that equation. One is the reality, like that is a human life inside of you. So, that is the first question you have to draw. And I think we all agree there's a truth in that. Like you are entitled to your opinion, but you are also entitled to be wrong. And so these people that stand on the opposite side and they use that for propaganda, they use it for clicks and bait. You have to understand that is still a human life. Mm-hmm. Secondly, that death is a 100%, still 100% rate for every single person in this world.
Yep.
And so your viewpoint of death also has to be taken into consideration here. Mm-hmm. Because, first of all, we can talk about the stats of the mother and the sadness that takes place because she lost her child. She lost that baby. But, like, to say that she is going through, like, no mother should have to go through this. Well, what about the abortion as well? Can we talk about the aftermath of women that actually have abortions and what it does to them?
The mentally. Regret that they live with every single day after they go through with it. So I definitely agree. And so what she talks about in the book is how to think about it from a more Christian aspect. Not only are we supposed to have empathy for the mom, because we absolutely should. We should be comforting her. We should be walking beside the mother, whether she thinks about an abortion, has an abortion, or has a stillborn, has a miscarriage, whatever it may be. Christians should be lifting the mother up, but we also have to look at it from the perspective of the child, because that's another human life. But apparently last night I was informed during this debate, as this person called me, Facebook Messenger called me at 12:30 a.m. and I didn't answer it. And long story short, I was like, the audacity that you have to call me at 12:30 a.m. and expecting me.
Because she said the reason was it's crazy that you could comment back to me, but you can't answer my phone call in a civil conversation.
And I was like, the audacity for you to believe that I owe you a phone call at 12:30 a.m. to argue is insane to me when I've never spoken to you like that before. But I would love to debate anytime regarding that. But she informed me that, babies aren't viable outside of the womb until around 24 weeks, which is true. It's like 21 is usually the earliest for the baby to survive outside the womb. And she told me that because of that, whatever inside the womb from conception until 24 weeks is not a human. So that was new that I learned, that the fetus, whatever it is that has...
You hit her back with, what is it?
Yeah, I was like, what is it? Is it a snake? Is it a bug? Is it a caterpillar? What is it? It has 10 fingers, 10 toes, a heartbeat. The body is visible.
How are you viewing
exactly what it is?
Because that's how you're ultimately painting this picture of babies as well.
Right.
I think people that don't understand abortion need to understand this is going to dictate how I perceive you viewing others.
Right. Absolutely. It's like the value of human life. And I know probably people are thinking, why are two men talking about abortion? Well, I think the men should be the first person to stand up for the most vulnerable in our world, because men are supposed to be the protectors. And how can we be protectors if we're not standing up for the voiceless inside the womb that are being slaughtered every single day?
Well, I'm not giving an opinion about your body. I'm talking about the body inside of you.
Amen. My body, my choice is a lie in and of itself, because there are two bodies. We know it's a scientific fact. That's what I was trying to... So I argued with this person over text for about another hour and a half, and I was like, it's a human. It's a scientific
what time did you go to bed?
Fact. Yeah, I know. Oh, what time did I go to bed? Around 2.
We just got over being sick too, right?
Yes,
From
for
not
staying
sleeping.
up. That's why we missed last week. But I was like, it's a human. It's a scientific fact. So at this point, these people are the party of science, yet they pick and choose which science they want to believe. So you say... people should understand what actually happens during abortion. We're going to go through them real quick. And explain what these different abortions are. So there are different kinds. We have an aspiration abortion, which is typically performed between 10 and 16 weeks gestation, which have removed the baby via suction. Now, this is not vulgar, but graphic reading it, and it makes me want to throw up. First, the abortion provider places sticks into the woman's cervix 24 to 48 hours before her procedure. This both opens the cervix and soaks up the amniotic fluid in the uterus, which is necessary for the baby's survival. Because of this, the baby is sometimes already dead by the time of the actual procedure, but many times they are not. Dead or alive during the abortion, the baby's limbs, torso, and skull are crushed and sucked out of the uterus using a vacuum tube. The next one is a D and X abortion, which usually is reserved for babies after 16 weeks of pregnancy. The abortion procedure starts the same way as aspiration abortion does, with the sticks to dilate the cervix. But because the baby is too big to be sucked out with a vacuum tube, her actual killing is removed, and removal requires more steps. To ensure the fetal demise, as the abortion industry describes it, the baby is killed by the abortionist inserting a needle filled with digoxin or potassium chloride, which is the same lethal injection that they use on death row for criminals and murderers. That same lethal injection is used on an innocent human inside the womb. It's through the mother's abdomen into the uterus and into the amniotic sac, and if the baby stops wiggling long enough, the abortionist injects the poison directly into her heart, or his heart. When the poison is released into the sac, the baby consumes it and dies. When the poison is injected through her chest and into her heart, she has a heart attack that kills her. This is the baby. At this point in the pregnancy, the baby may be too big, and her movements have become so strong that without the numbing medication that is used for the women during this procedure, the mother would be able to feel the baby punch and kick as it dies, as it's going through the procedure. Can you imagine, as a mother, that you don't even think that you're a mother because you're having an abortion, that you feel the baby kick and punch as it is dying because someone convinced someone that you can't thrive, that you can't have a successful life, that you should get rid of your child. At that point, the baby is developed enough to see, hear, and depending on her age, feel the pain of the abortion. While the existence of flinching, crying, and screaming by the child being aborted has been debated by doctors, we don't know exactly what the horrific signs and sounds in the womb during an abortion are. And even more horrifically, abortions don't always succeed in killing the baby. In 2013, a registered nurse testified before a House Judiciary Committee about her time working in one of these procedure rooms, where she described what it was like to discover that babies who survived abortions were being placed in a utility closet to die. She was traumatized and changed forever by the experience of holding a little abortion survivor for 45 minutes until he died at 21 or 22 weeks old. That baby was aborted because he had Down syndrome. So these are just a few of what the procedures are like. And people believe that it's okay. I was one of these people. I was a person who believed it was okay to have an abortion when the baby was predicted to have abnormalities like Down syndrome or missing a limb. Did I ever tell you the story of how I got past that point? I was in one of my classes in high school, and my teacher, it was a government class, and we were just debating abortion back and forth, and she wasn't telling us where she stood, but she gave us an example of she was pregnant, and the baby was predicted to not have arms and legs and missing limbs and stuff like that. So the doctor tried to convince her to have an abortion, and she considered it, but ended up not having it. And the baby turned out to be completely fine. And she said, that child is in your class. That child was one of my best friends at that time, and I had no idea that was her. I had no idea that it was my teacher's daughter. I had no idea that she was considered for an abortion, and I supported that at that point. And a couple months ago, I was speaking at my church back home regarding abortion and stuff, and I got to this story, and I looked up, and I see her sitting in the pew at my church, and I didn't even know that she went there because I've been gone for how many years. And it like almost broke me as I was middle speech. And I just can't fathom now thinking how anyone could just support, for whatever reason, especially because the baby might have a birth defect that she's more less than I am, that she's more less than you are because it might have Down syndrome or it might miss an arm. How can people support this and use it as a campaign slogan?
Right.
I just don't get it. It heartbreaks me. It's heartbreaking. It makes me sick just thinking about this. So the flip side of this whole entire story is to meet it with compassion. Yes, we have to love both the mother, but we also have to love the child itself. And how would you advise the church to kind of step up and to love them both and choose the correct empathy instead of this toxic empathy when it's such a pivotal issue in this election?
Well, Matthew 9, verses 35 to 38, it is Jesus talking about his mission work. He's going into towns, he's going into cities, into synagogues, and he's preaching and teaching the gospel. But also it says, I think in verse 36, he looked on the crowds of people coming. You know, he's with his disciples, but he's looking on the crowds of people coming. And it says that he had compassion on them. You see, the disciples and him were both looking at the same crowd. But Jesus had compassion. A lot of times you'll read in the Gospels where the disciples were trying to send the people away or say, like, this is too much, when Jesus, who sets the example for you and I, and this is my advice to the church, to do as Jesus had done. If we're trying to be more like Jesus, he gives us the example here. He had compassion on people because they were like people, they were like sheep without a shepherd. And a lot of times we look at people or sheep as just fit for the slaughterhouse.
Mm-hmm.
When realistically, Jesus, being the good shepherd, takes care of and has compassion on his people. And if he formed us in our inward, he formed us in our mother's womb, then why would we not approach it in the same manner?
Mm-hmm.
Why would we not look at it from a bit? It's kind of like what we talked about last night with approaching Scripture. We have to put on the lens, the eyeglasses of Christ and see it. And that's what he taught his disciples. He says, the harvest is plentiful and the laborers are few. And what does he tell them to do? He doesn't say go and run after these people, but rather pray for the laborers. And so we must first start praying for one another and praying for the laborers to do such a thing, to step up and be as Christ called us to be. And then it's funny to me because in chapter 9, verses 38, he says to pray. He says, pray for the laborers, talking to his disciples. 5 verses later, chapter 10, verse 5, it says he sends out the disciples. He sends out the laborers. And I'm like, you have a part to play.
Mm-hmm.
We are the laborers of 2024. We are the laborers of today. And God is calling us as Christians to be just that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good point because in the book, it talks about a statistic, according to the New York Times, pregnancy centers that are, pro-life pregnancy centers are largely run by conservative Christians.
Mm.
And there are 2 times more pro-life centers out there than there are Planned Parenthoods in America. So there are choices out there.
Yeah.
And it's the church that has stepped up and continues to step
and
up.
Should
Step up, should continue to step up, especially
in
in times like these.
Well, like if the church can be the church, like that does mean doing hard things. Mm-hmm. And that includes like if somebody's considering an abortion, like hands all the like, hey, like I'll take
mm-hmm.
care of this child.
Yeah.
Or families coming together and saying, we want to bring you and the child in.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it is an inconvenience, but like it's not, we weren't in this to be comfortable and convenient.
Mm-hmm.
Not once is that an offering. Rather, the offering is this: take up your cross.
Yeah.
And so, yes,
it just goes back to how do you view human life?
Mm-hmm.
And as Christians, we should view it and love thy neighbor.
Well,
as
it's just
ourselves.
It's viewing God, and then in viewing God, it's going to point me to how I should view
mm-hmm.
people, and it's a full circle moment.
Yeah.
And so,
and I know to that point of the church should be stepping up and saying, "Hey, I'll help raise it." I know there are plenty of people in our church here at Langston. I mean, we have the operators, the owners of Coastline Women's Center,
mm-hmm.
who come to this church.
Yeah.
And they give you the resources necessary. They give you the resources while you're pregnant. They educate you. They help you financially. They help you with, just products for the baby. They walk you through what the pregnancy is going to look like, how to help deliver the child. But then they go beyond that. They take it a step further. They help equip you for when you have the child, financially, with resources, and they're always there to be a helping hand. Mm-hmm. Whereas Planned Parenthood, you go in there, you don't get options. They don't talk about the other choices that you could have. They don't talk about that you can choose life. They will convince you and they will lie to you that your best option, no matter what your circumstance is to choose an abortion and to choose death. And the problem is they don't show an ultrasound. You don't get to see your child. You don't get to feel, or you don't get to hear the heartbeat. You don't get a sonogram. You don't get any of that. Whereas the pro-life centers, you get that, and they provide it for you for free. And these people in Planned Parenthood, they convince you. They don't give you a choice, and they will always choose murder every single time. And that's why I'm for a complete national abortion ban. I don't think this should be a state's issue. I want to get your take on this. So people will say that this is a state issue, and I know like you're not like a political person, but the state issue just goes back to this whole idea of slavery, where slavery was a state issue, where each state could say, well, you know, South Carolina, we want slavery, but in New York, we don't want slavery. How can we have the mindset that murder can be legal in one state and not the other?
I think both. If we're going to bring slavery into this too, both aren't a state issue. It's a heart issue. Like how you can look at somebody with hatred,
yeah,
or treat somebody like that has less value.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's the thing. They treated these people. They were 3/5 human in law. They weren't even a full person. Black people considered. They don't treat the babies inside the womb as humans either, as the person I argued with
it's not
last
a state
night.
issue. It's a heart issue, which means it's a nationwide issue. So no, I don't think it's a state issue. I think it's pure evil.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, the fact that we look at human beings with a lesser intent, whether it's their skin color, it is their disabilities, or anything for that matter. It's a sick world, and it's ourselves doing it. Like, and politicians ain't gonna fix it either.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
amen.
Truth be told, like it takes people stepping up and standing on biblical principles, standing on the name of Jesus, and not abusing the biblical principles. Because a lot of people are like, "Well, God was pro-slavery." No, He wasn't.
I don't know how anyone could come up with that.
Yeah.
I don't understand how anyone could say
Biblical illiteracy is what has gotten us to a point where we don't have biblical doctrine, which means we don't have biblical churches, which means we don't have a biblical mindset. And so, find a church that preaches biblical principles. Langston, I believe, does that. But also,
we have a seat for you.
We do. But at the end of the day, it is a heart issue that is taking place. It's taken place since the beginning of time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I know we talked a lot on that topic, but it's the one that I care about the most right now, of the cultural issue, because it's just so prominent in this election and the debates that we have. So that's the one I care about. But the other one I want to talk about, because I feel like it affects our generation the most, other than abortion, is either trans women or women, this lie, or love is love. So what the left has done, it really started with the Supreme Court case of same-sex marriage. You heard the thing of we just want to get married. We just want to love who we love, and we want to get married. And to some people, even some Christians, they were like, yeah, that's fine as long as you don't, intrude on me. You can love who you want. It doesn't matter. But it was a domino effect. As soon as the Supreme Court ruled that same-sex couples could get married, it was a domino effect to what we see now, where 1/3 of our generation identifies as gay, bi, trans, whatever it may be, and they're shoving it down our throats, and they're going after the children. In elementary schools, you have these books that are basically pornography that children are being either forced to read or allowed to read in their school libraries. So how do you think the left has manipulated the church's mind into accepting this?
Well,
because that's toxic empathy.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's toxic empathy. You can twist anything to make people. I mean, that you see it on commercials, with animal adoption, or give money to help us with these starving children, and realistically, like, those are good. Like, I'm not saying those are bad things. What I'm trying to get at is, I don't really know where I'm going with this, actually. So,
well, they manipulate and they try to make you feel bad for them, in a sense that we have to support them. Because, well, if we get to love who we love.
Okay, this is where I was getting, like, toxic empathy is like saying love is love.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have an improper definition of love, like, that means I can go and love a tree and marry a tree and fall in love with this tree, when realistically this isn't a fairy tale world. Mm-hmm. Like, we dress up for Halloween, but people are dressing up every day as something that they're not.
Yeah.
God had an original design for them, whether they believe that or not as well. And I think we have to have true empathy towards people. Like there are people that truly wrestle with their identity, their gender, their sexual desires, and the way we approach it does matter. The way the church approaches it does matter, but we also have to be true. Like love is being truthful. And so if you were in the wrong and you were continuing to abuse your body or abuse yourself in a manner that, but you're like, I enjoy this, I love this. Well, I'm like, well, love is love. You know, I'm going to let Coleton continue on in what he's doing. But then at the end of the day, when you lose your life or something bad happens to you, how loving was it of me to let you to continue on in that?
That's a perfect point. I'm going to see if I can find it. But basically, love is not love. God is love. And if we know that God is love, then we have to look at the definitions of.
So what do you think though about like God is love, and we both can establish that? Do you think it's important that we share the gospel?
Absolutely.
Do you believe that people that say that it's important to share the gospel are actually doing it?
Not all of them.
That's the issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the issue with us as well.
Yeah, not sharing it to the extent of the world that
to
we should be.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Like you want to talk about like are we chosen or does God choose us? Like here's the thing. God is in control of all things, but you still have a part to play.
Right.
So there's my answer to your question earlier.
I like it. There's this one part where it talks about a Bible verse that I can't remember, and I underline, and I can't remember exactly where.
Did you read the whole book?
I got through the main chapters I wanted, so 4 chapters. But it talks about, I really want to find this, but there's a verse in there about love and truth.
Mm-hmm.
And truth is loving.
Yes.
So to your point of allowing someone to continue down this road of...
Yeah, how unloving is it?
Yeah, because you're lying to them, and that's not love, because love is truth. They're intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have love without truth and truth without love.
Yeah.
So yes, the way that you approach it has to be, in a loving way, but you have to speak the truth because people are going to have their lives torn apart. I know people firsthand that continue to just go down the same route. And a lot of times they don't want to listen to you. They don't want to listen to the truth. And,
yeah,
you have to plant the seed though.
Yeah. Even when you know it's wrong. Like there were things in my life that I was dwelling in and whatnot, and I knew they were wrong, but I was continuing on. And what happens is it becomes embedded in your mind, and so addiction starts to take place, or whatever it might be. You get to a certain point where you're past any relevancy of understanding. Yeah. And so you are living in this fairy tale because you believe you're in a fairy tale, and that's where we are in America now, or all over the world, I guess you can say, where people are identifying as something that they are not, because people have bought into it, where they're taking place. They're like, oh, I didn't know your pronouns, I'm going to call you by this. And so you're influencing. Parents are allowing their children to dress up as animals at school, or decide what they're going to be today, or if they're going to be a different gender. And what we're doing is we're accepting it. And when we're accepting it, we're ultimately saying we don't care about this person.
Yeah, agreed. And to tie this all back into the election before we get to our most important part of the podcast, I have been talking to a friend for a few months now, trying to convince them to vote, right? And just talking about the different issues and why I believe that they should be voting as a Christian just in and of itself, but why I believe that you should be voting for a certain person. I don't even know where I was going with this, but there was a really good point here. Oh, this person said something along the lines of, I don't know if I want to vote until I feel like they're stripping God away, or preventing me from worshiping God in that sense. And my response was, let's look at the past 10 years. Where we are today, because they've taken God out of schools. They've took away God's definition of marriage, which has led to a domino effect. And just recently, Kamala Harris said during her rally, when someone spoke up and said Jesus is Lord, she says, you're at the wrong rally. You should be at the smaller one down the street. And this has just been happening for years and years. And it's little subtle things that I don't think a lot of us really just connect it to the big picture of these people are coming after our faith. These people are trying to change the design of God's word, God's truth, and turn it into my truth and not the truth. So my encouragement to people is just do the research. Understand what the Bible says and what the different platforms are. We both say that no party is perfect. I hate identifying myself as a Republican at times. I'd like to say I'm a Christian conservative. That's it. And I think most Christians, I think every Christian should be conservative, because if you're a conservative, you're just going off of biblical principles. You don't have to be a Republican. You don't have to be a Democrat. You don't even have to be an independent, but you should be in a conservative mindset of preserving biblical principles. And I think that's just how you need to navigate this election, is just look at the top issues and look how each side is going about them. And I think the choice should be made clear.
How many weeks are we until Election Day?
Less than 2. Currently, we are 12 days away, and it makes me sick. And you know what's starting to really tick me off right now is I'm seeing all these people on Twitter who say that, well, I've been a lifelong Republican and a conservative for years now, and that is why I'm voting for Kamala Harris to save democracy. You're not a conservative. You're not a Republican. You're a nitwit if you believe that Kamala Harris is going to save democracy, which we're not a democracy, people. We are a representative republic. So let's get that one correct first, and that she's conservative. How can you call yourself a conservative and vote for the woman in the party that wants to strip every conservative ideology and shred it up and throw it away?
Yeah.
And the October surprise, I don't know if you know what an October surprise is, but every election cycle, something happens in October because it's right before the election that tries to get people swayed one way.
The hurricane?
No, not necessarily. Like the last one was the Hunter Biden laptop. I'm sure you heard about the Hunter Biden laptop coming out in 2020. No. Anyway, it was a big thing to try to make the shift. But this cycle, the only thing that they can come up with is that Trump is a Nazi, that Trump is Hitler. That's their big October surprise, is trying to compare him to.
Interesting.
So when you're trying to compare him to Hitler, it's, you know that you're losing and you're in deep trouble. But it's like the pot calling the kettle black, because these people are authoritative. They are under a authoritarian dictatorship. Kamala Harris didn't even receive one vote in the primary, yet she's the nominee. Tell me how that's preserving democracy.
My encouragement to people is don't listen to influencers, don't listen to celebrities, don't even listen to us. I think that people need to vote, based on biblical principles, like your worldview matters. Don't just take somebody's opinion for it.
Yeah, I was going to say you should listen to people, but then research and back it up. In a church, like at a Sunday sermon, Sunday morning sermon, don't just take the preacher's word for what he says. Go back and make sure the
back it up.
Bible matches
what does the
what
Bible say? Because I care more about the Bible than my own personal opinion or exposition of the text. So they should align, basically. And so you should align with your biblical values. And if you don't believe in biblical values, then I would recommend, I hate saying try Jesus, because Jesus is not a campaign that I'm trying to sell. I'm trying to help you understand the idea that you need righteousness, and the only way to obtain righteousness is through Christ and Christ alone. So repent and believe the gospel. That's the first calling to any and every person in this world, is to be a Christ follower. So do that, vote with wisdom, and prayerfully consider everything laid out in front of you and vote accordingly. So, but do vote. Christians, vote.
I mean, it is the Great Commission that we're supposed to go disciple other nations. Yeah. And we're supposed to be doing good as Christians, right? And if the government is dictating good and evil in a sense of law, we should be involved in that process of picking the people who decide.
Well, too, it goes back to like those two images of the pie charts.
Mm-hmm.
Like God cannot just be a piece of your life or a part of your life. God has to be the center of your life, and then everything flows from that very being, which is Christ. And so don't put yourself in the middle there. Put Christ and allow everything, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, to be done for the glory.
And most importantly, just be praying for this country. Be
praying for both candidates.
Yeah.
Be praying for this election period. Be praying for people that vote. Be praying for America. We need to be a nation on our knees. So
Listen to My America, I Still Believe by Danny Goki. Oh, just lays it out so perfectly. I put it on my story the other day. He basically says, I still believe in us, my America, even though we're a little bruised up. We still should be fighting for liberty, freedom, and against tyranny. So,
hey, I'm hungry. So
let's get to the most important part of the podcast. Be sure to go vote, though. All right. Big games this week. All 5 are ranked. First one.
I'm ready.
In
Going 5-0. Calling it now.
Yeah, I said that last week, and that didn't turn out well. This one is at MetLife Stadium. We got number 12, Notre Dame, and number 24, Navy.
Give me Navy.
We are both going
My hot take.
Navy.
I'm riding the ship.
I'm a Navy fan. I hate Notre Dame. So I cannot stand Notre Dame. I think they're overrated half the time.
I'm just all on board with the with Army and Navy right now.
Yeah.
I love seeing both of them in the AP poll. I hope that we have an undefeated matchup at the end of the year. I hope Army and Navy both beat Notre Dame. I'm going to take them both when they play them.
This next game is a little sore for people in this room. We got number 20 Illinois and number 1 Oregon.
Give me the Ducks.
It is at home. Oregon beat Ohio State, and we both picked. No, I picked
Oregon.
Ohio State.
Even though I said I picked Oregon because I hate Ohio State so much, but I thought Ohio State was going to win.
Raina has one true friend in here. It's not PJ. You're going to Oregon. I'm also going to Oregon. It's at home.
I was thinking Hannah Montana. You're a true friend.
True friend. Okay, number 21 Missouri at number 15 Alabama.
Alabama by a million. I think Missouri is one of the most fraudulent teams this season. And I think I had them in my 12-team playoff at the end there. Could have. I don't know.
I think next week we have to do our new playoff prediction.
Yeah, me and Keith were working on it this week, and it's tough. It is
Keith
tough
are
right
working
now.
on, what is this, a pet project that the church is
doing? He came
doing?
to my office. He's like, give me your 12. And so I pulled out a piece of paper, and I was trying to figure it out. But
is Clemson one of them?
Yeah.
I don't
Clemson's
think so.
winning the ACC.
I think Miami's winning the ACC. I think Clemson hasn't played anyone yet.
I think
except
Clemson beats
Georgia,
Miami.
Killed.
But don't count SMU out.
Oh, they are going to lose to, who are they? Duke. They're losing to Duke this week at Duke.
No, they aren't.
Yes, they are. We're not putting that one in there, though.
Duke really hasn't played anyone.
Okay, I'm also picking Bama. Roll Tide. Next one, we got number 5 Texas against ranked Vanderbilt. 25. If Texas would have won last week, I think Vanderbilt would have won this week.
Wrestled with Ball State.
Vanderbilt
placed in their competition.
Vanderbilt beat Bama.
It's 1 week, though, out of the year. I loved that week, by the way. I loved watching Vanderbilt take down Alabama. However, it also, this Texas team's hungry, I think. But I also think that was a little bit weird with the Texas-Georgia game, how the referees
They made the right call in the end. It was not.
I think they watched the replay and were like,
I've never seen that before.
Yeah, it was suspicious.
I don't know how you can move the ball and then overturn.
I definitely think it was in a turnover, but at the same time, call it when it happened.
Yeah.
Don't call it after all of this. These beer bottles were thrown on the field.
Yeah.
And whatnot. It was wild. But
I'm also unfortunately going with Texas.
I thought you said you'd never choose Texas.
I wouldn't. If they would have lost last week, then I chose Texas last week, I think. Next up, last but not least, number 8 LSU, 14 Texas A&M.
This is, I think, where game day should have been.
Where are they at?
Indiana, Washington.
What?
Yeah.
They could have done
They
Notre
should have
Dame
done that
Navy.
with Ohio State and Indiana in a couple weeks.
That's stupid.
I'm all for the Indiana. I'm on the bandwagon. I hope they go undefeated. But at the same time, I love the coach too.
Who are they playing?
He's like, Google me, I win, and he's not wrong.
Who are they playing? Washington?
Yeah, yeah. It's a noon game.
What a waste.
Noon kickoff.
You know what else is a noon kickoff?
Don't even want to talk about it.
Womp womp. Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah,
for that
and here we have West Virginia every week, a night game.
It's because we play quality teams. We played 4 ranked teams this year.
Do you think the Big 12 is better than the Big 10?
Big Ten, no. ACC, yes.
I agree with that statement. A&M in the LSU A&M game. It's at A&M, right?
Uh-huh.
I think if it was at LSU, because we did this with the Ole Miss, or I did this with the Ole Miss game,
Mm-hmm.
I should have taken in consideration it was at LSU. But I am going with the home team here. I think Texas A&M. I think it can go either way, though, but I'm going to take the Aggies.
I'm going LSU.
Yeah, you need to, because is every other pick.
That's why I was just counting, but I actually think LSU could win this one. I
Oh,
think
yeah,
Texas
it can go
A&M is
either
also
way.
overrated.
Yeah, I mean, they lost in
A
there.
lot of the teams I
think
just don't like
the
are
teams-
overrated.
The trajectory of teams changes so much from the beginning of the season to the middle of the season to the end of the season. To
Neil
me,
Brown?
I don't think you can. I don't.
Why are you still in Morgantown, dude?
Yeah, we couldn't go an episode without talking about Neil Brown and Colton's opinion on him.
Off with his head, man. I cannot.
Give me 5-0 this week. 5-0. That's my goal. 1 week.
Well, one of us is going to be.
One of us has to hit. Yeah, one of us will be either 4-1, maybe 0-5. I thought it was going to be. I would have been 0-5. I think 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, except you changed your picks.
I did. Thank God I did. That was my only 2 wins.
Just like a Democrat. Changing your
How
vote.
rude. How rude. My wife reminds me of Michelle Tanner from Full House.
What?
That is who she is. If you watch the episodes and then you like are around my wife, you're like, this is weird.
This is the first time she sat in on the podcast.
Yep.
She's like, hurry up. And when you go home.
And we're going to eat dinner.
Oh, yeah. We might be at your house or not.
That's
when you
fine.
get back.
Feed the dog for me. If you need a dog, we have one. So she's wonderful.
She
and
jumps.
beautiful.
You have to
She's
pin her down.
She's
by the
like
throat.
a child. You have to train. You have to train them.
Someone doesn't have the time or energy to train them.
Excuse me?
You.
I would do it if I had the finances to pay somebody else to do it.
Well, Jordan, take some more overtime.
Yeah. You can Venmo me at PJ. No, I'm just kidding.
You can get that $600 overtime. That actually is not $600 that she thought was.
That was funny.
A mistake.
How do we close this episode?
How do we close it out? Go out and vote. To go out and vote a certain way. And that way is biblically. And there's only one side.
And if you aren't
that is
registered to
closer.
vote yet, it's too late.
Yeah, too late. Vote early. Vote early, please, if you can. If you live in a state where you
Why?
can vote early, why? Because the election day malfunctions happen. What if the machines are down? You can't vote. What if it's raining that you don't feel like standing in the rain? What if the line's too long? You just don't feel like standing in the line. You have sometimes 14 days to go out and vote early. Do it. We did it today. We stood in line for maybe 30 minutes max. It was fun. We talked the whole entire time. And you probably thought I was going to get killed at certain times, and we left Raina, and
Raina
actually
voted.
we didn't.
Raina beat us.
You did because you want to go to the Halloween store.
I needed a costume for our trunk or treat.
And did we get one?
No.
So we wasted 30 minutes while Raina was standing in line by
Is
herself.
it really time wasted though? We got to spend quality time together, and you seem
We
to have a
could've
problem with
spent-
spending. You seem to have problem spending time with your friends though.
I'm here this weekend. Where are you?
I'm here.
Doing
I'm at
what?
a wedding. Hey guys, I'm sorry. My friend wants to hang out with me. I can't be in your wedding.
Well, that's kind of what you did to me last week.
You were sick last week.
Well, did you want to be around me?
No.
Okay, then. So don't complain. And I was going to be in West Virginia anyway. Thank God
Toxic
I didn't.
empathy.
No, that ain't toxic empathy. That's just you
That's
being
just called
stupid.
empathy.
It's just called you being stupid. And I won't be here next week.
Hey, grace and peace to each of you. We love you. See you next week.
God bless.